sex tourism. That actually happens, you know? It's called the Asian fever.
I haven't checked the temperature lately.
There is a lot of tourism just for that. And we need to understand whether or not these people, these tourists, are coming here for the right reasons. Because it's one thing going to a nice place in islands of the Philippines, but it's another thing that comes here solely to have an entanglement with women. So how do you really find out their agenda? The number one thing you have to really look out for are their little traits. Are these expats really exploring the Philippines or only exploring the Red District, where they can get access to so many women?
Thailand, Vietnam, Laos, the Philippines, and Malaysia. What do they all have in common? Besides being in the midst of development and having faced past mired with colonialism, these countries are all well known for sex tourism, wherein men go on vacation for the purpose of buying sex from impoverished women, particularly out of Orientalism and due to the cheap cost in comparison to their own countries.
I don't know who needs to hear this, but yellow fever is not a compliment. Yellow fever is the fetishization of East Asians by non-Asians to an obsessive degree. Growing up in the Bay Area where my high school was 92% Asian, this was never a problem I experienced. It wasn't until I went out of state for college that I realized how prevalent this phenomenon is in our generation, especially at predominantly white institutions. Throughout college, so many people have made ignorant comments telling me how yellow fever is a good thing for me as an East Asian woman. I completely disagree with and reject this sentiment because I know that yellow fever is deeply rooted in racialized and gendered stereotypes. The general public commonly associates East Asians with submission and exoticism, something that has been perpetuated by both Eastern and Western media. But what seems to be a harmless romantic preference is undeniably a microaggression which feeds into the objectifying male gaze. Yellow fever is inherently racist because it reduces East Asians to a distorted perception of our culture, eradicating our individualism. Asian Americans are not a monolith, and our identities are certainly not some racialized fantasy. As Asian Americans, we need to speak up and remember that our self-worth is not defined by whether or not society desires us.
These tourists bring in between 2 to 14% of GDP, according to a 2017 report on child prostitution in Southeast Asia. The report additionally found that over 1 million children are victims of sex trafficking, comprising 35% of prostitutes in the area. In other words, men from more affluent countries visit poorer countries, not only to take advantage of the limited economic opportunities for women, but to specifically exploit children under the belief that they will not be prosecuted for doing so. And truthfully, they're right. Many developing countries lack child safeguarding laws, or, even if denied in public, benefit from the tourism enough to not want to address the issue. Organized prostitution was not common in much of Southeast Asia until the 1950s, when veterans lingered or returned to the area with money to spend. Due to the economic instability, high poverty rates, lack of opportunities, and familial obligations, many families sell their daughters to brothels. Others are pressured to take the only path available to them, even though it still carries a large stigma in their hometowns. Westerners are reported to be more interested in street children, trading a place to stay and a warm meal for sex, while Cambodian men use the many massage parlors and thinly hidden brothels that fill the cities. Although the Cambodian government has made efforts to crack down on the reputation of being a pedophilic hotspot, as noted by Johansson in her survey of the region, with their criminal justice system being deficient and having problems with corruption, it has been slow going. This is especially true as the perpetrators are often those who work with law enforcement, thus making their reports deficient because of the high corruption within the country. It is difficult to do justice to the reality of what Cambodia was like when the child sex trade was far more open, and the pedophiles did not fear being indicted for a crime here when they returned back home. A 2002 article published in the Telegraph titled, "It's Like a Sweet Shop. If this girl is not right, get another," details what it was like in notorious Svai Pak, a street of brothels 12 kilometers outside of the capital, Phnom Penh. The author notes that most of the girls are Vietnamese, they say, sold into temporary slavery by parents desperate to bail themselves out of debt. Others are drawn from 3 local villages. By the time they are 7, but certainly no later than their 13th birthday. Their virginity is sold for hundreds of dollars. Thereafter, the price diminishes steadily, eventually dropping to £3. Many of the men who frequented the area were not ashamed to speak openly. Paul, a 62-year-old from Liverpool, argued that the girls trafficked in the brothels matured faster than British girls, making comments such as, "With 13 and 14-year-olds, by the time she gets to SVIPOC, she's probably had sex 100 times, maybe 500 times for all I know. You didn't turn her, you didn't make her do that. You're taking advantage of the situation and the opportunity, and it's not your fault." And 15, 16 is like 20 in Britain, and 14 is getting round to that. Others openly bragged about sleeping with 12 and 11-year-olds and gave recommendations on which offered better services to the reporter. With many organizations presenting prostitution and sex trafficking as work, this form of abuse legitimizes the objectification of women and children and dehumanizes people, both on the axis of age, race, and gender.
So I've been wondering if the people that say decriminalize sex work or legalize prostitution actually hate women, or if they're just that naive and stupid that they don't understand. The new vague terminology of sex work really does a lot to delegitimize the severity of the issues of prostitution and human trafficking. Lumping people like OnlyFans girls, strippers, and prostitutes together is so fucked up because two of those things are legal and one of those things is criminalized. And there's a big reason for that. Sweden increased their criminalization of prostitution. The results, less human trafficking. Denmark decriminalized prostitution. Germany expanded the legalization of it. And what are those results? Vast increases in human trafficking. In 2015, the average age of girls in the sex trade was between 11 and 14. 43% of sex buyers in a Chicago study believed that because they paid, the women should do anything they ask. Where does consent fit into the business model of selling sex? This is not liberation. This is encouraging violence against women.
Language is important in how information is internalized, and after all, sex slave and lady of the night, or sex trafficking victim and sex worker, paint very different pictures. The role poverty plays in the perpetuation of child sex trafficking cannot be overstated, as the prices human traffickers pay for the children range from the equivalent of 8 to 80 euros, in comparison to the average wages of as little as 50 cents a day. Children are increasingly being sought out due to a cult of virginity, where youth and lack of sexual experience are viewed as desirable. While many foreigners do visit Cambodia for the express purpose of abusing a child, it must be noted that 85% of clients of prostitution are locals, while 15% are foreigners.
Millions of Western men visit Southeast Asia each year for tourism and business, but a significant number of them engage in the exploitation of vulnerable populations, particularly women and children. This exploitation has been documented for decades and continues despite efforts to combat it. Extreme poverty and the exchange rate are factors that contribute to the persistence of this problem. Harmful stereotypes have made Asian women particularly vulnerable. Cultural beliefs that value male dominance and control of women are also contributing factors. But something much darker is a factor in why men are traveling to Southeast Asia to harm children. In a world where not all lives matter, many can and do take advantage of the fact that law enforcement agencies do not take these cases as seriously as they do others. It's important that we work together to address these issues and help protect the most vulnerable populations from harm. To combat exploitation and sex trafficking, check out the caption for more information.
Additionally, many of the children forced into prostitution are victims of their own families. Many mothers sell their daughters into brothels out of desperation, and many daughters go along with it due to cultural pressure to place the family's well-being over her own. Given the perceived value of virginity, which many believe bestow good health or virility on men who sleep with them, the girls are often taken to hospitals to get a virginity certificate before being deposited to their abusers. Often, small loans of a few $100s balloon to thousands and leave loan sharks circling. With virginity selling being so normalized and many parents unable to see other options, they offer up their daughters to get themselves out of desperate situations. Charities like Agape International Missions offer interest-free loan refinancing to get families out of the debt trap, and factory jobs for rescued daughters and their mothers, which presents a path away from the sex trade. However, the men and women who run these brothels are rarely given harsh punishments and are likely to reoffend and find new victims after release.
We return to the alleged scene of the crime, the Cobra Bar. The authorities shut down the Cobra Bar weeks ago. A British citizen and his Thai wife allegedly ran the bar. The recording showed that the children were apparently forced to get drunk with the customers to the point of unconsciousness. European and Korean men were the main customers looking for underage girls. This footage was filmed at the Cobra Bar just weeks before it was closed and put on YouTube. Men boast about their sexual exploits with minors. Some of the girls have their birth dates tattooed on their bodies in Roman numerals, a clear signal to clients where to find children for sale. He reports that large parts of Patia's illegal sex industry are now in the hands of the Chinese mafia, and we spot what appears to be a child holding hands with a tourist. No one intervenes or even seems surprised by it.
It is no surprise that Southeast Asia remains a hub for child abuse, as progress is slow going. Except with the rise of the internet and the use of the dark web, one doesn't even have to fly here to experience it for themselves. Peter Scully, an Australian expat who lived in the Philippines, is perhaps the most well-known producer of child sex abuse materials in Southeast Asia. He created the 4-part video Daisy's Destruction, which illustrates the abuse and torture of an 18-month-old child, along with many other videos of pay-per-view child abuse.
Why would you abuse an 18-month-old child?
Well, for a start, I didn't. And
Well, that's not true, is it?
it is true. No, I'm sorry, you're
Oh,
wrong.
I'm sorry. How old was she?
Huh?
How old was she, Peter?
You are confusing different things. I don't want to get into that.
How old was she?
Huh?
How old was she?
I don't want to get into any of that yet.
Right, okay. Whether that child was 18 months, 2 years, 3 years, or perhaps we're mixing it up with a 9-year-old child or an 11-year-old girl, 12-year-old girl. You've done it to all of them, haven't you?
All right, I will go back to this now. No comment.
Men openly admit to coming to Asia for sex. Fewer openly admit that they seek children. Others are opportunistic and aren't actively seeking child victims, but will take them if they stumble upon the opportunity. While the most notorious streets are no longer openly advertising, behind many karaoke bars and massage parlors, trafficked women and children remain for sale to those who know where to look. This, dear viewers, is where we part. I mention that I'm in Cambodia quite often, but I don't think I've really done any deep dives into what it's like for women here. Part of that is Cambodia is well known for the corruption and the interesting government. One of the organizations which had done research on child sex trafficking and written an unfavorable article about it were kicked out of the country for being critical, for getting too much attention. And in that same vein, there are certain things that I just don't want to risk talking about too openly, because sure, my channel is relatively small, but you don't want the attention of the government on you. It's simple as that. And that goes for pretty much any country, but I would rather not have to deal with being removed if I said the wrong thing. However, what I just told you about is not just a Cambodian problem. It's also happening in Thailand, Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia. It's very, very disturbing, and particularly what I find just difficult to come to terms with is how open guys are here about the fact that they're buying sex. I used to live on Street 172, which is a lady bar street. There's some nice places, Riverside, that are cool, but drug use and prostitution are very normalized over there. And there was a bar that I used to go to quite often that had live music every night, which I liked because it was very easy just to walk downstairs, go over 2 bars, and go listen to music. But it was really, really uncomfortable to recognize that this is a bar full of women in skimpy outfits. And mind you, in Cambodia, modesty is still more common, when women go swimming, for example, on hiking trips that I've been on, they're still wearing like t-shirts over the bathing suits. I've even seen some swim in complete jeans, pants. So they're wearing these very skimpy outfits, and normally I don't get approached because obvious woman, but sometimes someone will try anyway. And there's a whole process for it. You have to buy a lady drink, which is an overpriced alcoholic drink. You have to buy a couple of those, and then the process goes, you pay a fee to the bar, and then you can pay the prostitute and take her with you. And I've witnessed that process many times, sitting there trying to listen to a live music band. And in that same area, I mean, I try to sit by myself in the corner with a friend or whatever. I'm not trying to associate with prostitutes or to accidentally get their attention, because I look gender nonconforming enough that they will mistake me for being a client. But I've noticed sitting there and observing these things, you'll see girls who look really young. Everyone lies about their age. I've met women who are in their 40s who still claim to be 30. I've met girls who I know cannot be older than 14 or 15 working at a bar. And the thing is, even if it is a job that's legitimate, like waitressing, if you work in bars in a certain area, you're still going to be propositioned. So the fact that she was working there to begin with meant that she was engaging in prostitution. And just in general, the knowledge of how normalized it is here. It's very frustrating. It's very sad. And the thing is, I don't see any easy solutions to this, because people love to talk about choice. Well, it's not really a choice when the choice is starvation or extreme poverty or do this thing. And it's not a choice when it's you're a child and you're out on the street and your option is do this or don't have dinner and don't have a place to sleep. I don't have any easy solutions for this problem. I just know that it very much disturbs me, and I did want to talk about specifically the men who come to Asia to meet children. Anyhow, if you guys have any comments, questions, or concerns, you can let me know in the comment section down below. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.